This video is part 4 of Dorne history. In part 1, we learned about the first men coming to Dorne. In part 2, we learned about the kingdoms of the first men and the coming of the Andals. In part 3, we learned about the coming of the Rhoynar. After the Rhoynar came and successfully helped the Martells gain control of Dorne, the Martells would rule Dorne for 400 years while settling rebellions, keeping other rulers out of their country, and such. However, 400 years into their ruling of Dorne, the greatest threat would come with Aegon the Conqueror in 4 AC. Dorne, though they suffered greatly and may have been occupied for a time, are the only one of the 7 kingdoms that managed to remain independent from House Targaryen. This video is about Aegon's conquest of Dorne. This may be repeat information if you've seen my Aegon the First videos, but should be the last of those in the Dornish series. But because this is a repeat for a lot of you, I'm working on releasing an extra Game of Thrones video this week. So 2 years after conquering the Iron Islands, Aegon turned his eyes back to Dorne in 4 AC, the only one of the 7 kingdoms he failed to conquer in his initial conquest of Westeros. He had first sent Rhaenys ahead on her dragon Meraxus to burn Planky Town and then approach Sunspear. Next, Aegon and Lord Harlan Tyrell fought in the Prince's Pass against the Mountain Lords. But Lord Tyrell and his men were not used to the climate of Dorne, and many of them died of thirst and exposure on their way through the pass to Hellholt. The other issue involved the fact that the Dornish in the pass would attack the men with rocks, spears, and arrows, and then quickly disappear before Tyrell's men could attack or Aegon could mount his dragon to burn them. Dorne had very sound strategies, especially after watching the rest of the 7 kingdoms get basically curb-stomped by Aegon the First. So they chose to fight in the shadows and guerrilla style as Aegon and Lord Tyrell made their way through the pass. Eventually though, after losing men to the attacking stony Dornishmen in heat, Lord Harlan Tyrell and his men would make it through the pass and to Hellholt, but they would find the castle empty. Meanwhile, Aegon continued on to Euronwood. There he found Euronwood basically deserted except for a small number of boys, old men, and women. After a brief and easy siege, Aegon took the castle. He continued on but found much of the same. Castle after castle was abandoned. Again, the Dornish weren't stupid. They knew exactly what would happen if they fought Aegon and his dragon. A very fiery, painful death. The Dornish would fight no grand battles or defend their castles because of this knowledge. Aegon would eventually head to Ghost Hill, the seat of House Tolan, that sat on top of a white chalk hill overlooking the Sea of Dorne. There he found their banner flying, and Aegon was told House Tolan's champion was coming out to face him. Aegon met the champion in battle and quickly defeated him, only to find out later that this champion was actually House Tolan's mad fool, and the castle had been deserted beforehand. House Tolan responded to Aegon killing their fool by raising a new house banner much later, a green dragon eating its own tail on a gold banner. As Aegon, Rhaenys, and Lord Tyrell did their thing, Orys Baratheon also led his own assault on the Boneway. This assault went all wrong. The Dornish men pelted Orys Baratheon's men with rocks, spears, and arrows just like they did in the other pass, but also at night they would murder Orys Baratheon's men. The Dornish also managed to block both entrances to the Boneway, trapping Orys and his men in the treacherous pass. Shortly after being trapped in the Boneway, Orys Baratheon and his men, the ones that survived the assaults, would be captured by the Dornish Lord Will of House Will. Orys Baratheon and his men would spend 3 long years in captivity, and a burning hatred for the Dornish would be lit inside Orys by the end of their imprisonment. Finally, Aegon would meet Rhaenys at Sunspear and find even the Princess of Dorne was gone. Aegon declared this a victory and that he now had domain over Dorne. Aegon put Lord Rosby in charge of Sunspear and gave Lord Tyrell a small host to put down any rebellion that may occur. Rhaenys and Aegon then returned to King's Landing. But we know the saucy Dornish, who do not know how to quit, and almost the very moment Aegon left, they chose to rise up in rebellion. The Dornish began to put Aegon's men to death. And they even began to play a game with the men Aegon left in Dorne, seeing how long each night could last while being tortured and bits of them chopped off. Lord Rosby met a different end. The Princess of Dorne herself personally saw to his death. Even though she was an old, blind, and very fat woman, she dragged him bound hand and foot to the top of Spear Tower, where she threw him out a window to his death. Lord Tyrell, hearing of the rebellion, quickly headed out from Hellholt, intent on taking Bath, and then going to Sunspear, but his entire army soon disappeared into the sands. Lord Tyrell and his men were never heard from again. Some travelers say that there are areas that when the wind shifts the sand, bones can be seen, but the Dornish claim those aren't Lord Tyrell and his men's bones, but that those sands are the burial grounds for thousands of years of wars. So, The Dornish successfully take their land back, and in this time around 7 AC, Orys Baratheon and his men are finally ransomed back by Aegon. But when they are returned to Aegon, each and every one of them are missing their sword hand. Remember how I said Orys Baratheon's capture by the Dornish lit a fire of hate? This is when it became an inferno. He would be called Orys One Hand after this, and years in the future when the opportunity came to attack the Dornish again, Lord Baratheon would jump on the opportunity. So Orys Baratheon, Aegon's best friend, is returned one-handed, and Aegon has lost control of Dorne, if you believe Aegon really ever had control of Dorne. But regardless, Aegon is furious at this point, and he is out for revenge. Aegon and his sister wives mount their dragons, and they burn each Dornish castle over and over. Dorne responds to this by sending a force to Cape Wrath in 8 AC, sacking 6 towns and villages and burning half the Rainwood. In 9 AC, Aegon, still in a rage, counters the attack on Cape Wrath by burning more Dornish castles. Dorne counters this by sending Lord Fowler and his men to the Castle Nightsong, where they burn it and take captives. Dorne also sends Sir Joffrey Dane to Old Town, where they raze the fields and villages outside the city. Aegon, still in rage, decides to set fire in 10 AC to Starfall, Skyreach, and Hellholt. Unfortunately for Aegon, at Hellholt the Dornish win a big victory. A bolt from a scorpion hits Aegon's wife, Rhaenys, dragon in the eye, sending the dragon crashing to the castle, destroying the castle's highest tower and part of its walls. Whether Rhaenys died with her dragon is still disputed. Some claim she lost her seat when her dragon was hit and fell to her death. Others that she was crushed under her dragon. And still others say that the Ullars, Lord of Hellholt, found the fallen queen and slowly tortured her to death in their dungeons. The death of Rhaenys began the dragon's wrath that lasted 2 years. Aegon, grieving over the death of his favorite sister wife, and Visenya, Aegon's other sister wife, grieving over her sister's death, together set every castle, keep, and holdfast, save Sunspear in the Shadow City, on fire at least once. There are 2 theories why he avoided Sunspear. Some say that the Princess of Dorne had discovered a way to kill dragons and implemented it in Sunspear, and that Aegon stayed away because he didn't want his or his sister's dragon to be killed, while others claim it's more likely that Aegon meant to turn Dorne against the Martells. Numerous letters were found to be sent to the other houses of Dorne saying that the Martells had bought their own safety from the Targaryens. In the letters, they urged the other houses to surrender to Aegon since the Martells had betrayed them. But the Dornish aren't stupid, and they are a stubborn lot, and they still refuse to surrender to Aegon, despite the mind games he was playing. During this time, Aegon also put prices on the heads of Dornish lords. Though about 6 Dornish lords were killed, only 2 of those assassins ever escaped Dorne to collect the bounty. Dorne responded to these assassinations the same way, paying for the death of lords serving under Aegon I. Lords under Aegon's rule died by these assassins, and even King's Landing wasn't safe. Lord Fell died in a brothel. Aegon was attacked 3 different times, and even Aegon's wife Visenya was attacked in King's Landing and almost died. There's also mention of Lord Will of Will, who was particularly brutal in the things he did to lords serving the Iron Throne in Fontaine and Old Oak, but there isn't a lot of detail on the particularly gruesome things he did there. And while all these assassinations are going on, Dorne at this time is a burning ruin, but they still absolutely refuse to back down, fighting from the shadows. It is said at this point the toll in lives is uncountable, and that even the small folk of Dorne refuse to surrender. They are willing to fight to their very last breath, and this war would not end until the Princess of Dorne died in 13 AC, and the Dornish throne passed to her aged son, Prince Nymor, who just wanted an end. He sent a delegation carrying the skull of Meraxus, Rhaenys' dragon that died in Hellholt, led by his daughter Princess Daria to King's Landing. Her arrival at King's Landing was not met well initially. A lord at King's Landing even demanded that Princess Daria be sent to the worst brothel in King's Landing to serve. However, Aegon let her talk. Princess Daria spoke that Dorne wanted peace with Aegon and his kingdom, but a peace between 2 kingdoms no longer at war, not peace between a vassal and a lord. But Aegon's men quickly began to chant no peace without submission throughout Aegon Fort, and told Aegon he would look weak if he surrendered. Aegon was close to refusing the offer for peace when Daria handed him a letter from her father. Aegon clutched the letter so tight his hand bled. He rose, burned the letter, and departed to Dragonstone on his dragon's back. The next morning, Aegon returned to his Iron Throne, agreed to peace, and signed the treaty. No one knows what was in that letter. Did they threaten to hire faceless men to kill Aegon's children? Or did Dorne reveal that they still had Rhaenys, alive and being tortured, and that if Aegon wanted his beloved sister wife's pain to end, to sign the treaty? Regardless of what the letter said, after this, Dorne and the Iron Throne found peace for a time, until other Targaryen kings got it in their head to take Dorne on again. Part 5 of Dorne will be Dorne after Aegon I's attack, including other attacks by the Targaryens on Dorne, and Dorne's interactions with the rest of the Seven Kingdoms after the First Dornish War. Come back every Sunday and Wednesday for a Game of Thrones video with an extra video this week. Also, this is the second week of the poster giveaway. All you have to do is leave a comment on any video released between July 12th and July 18th, and then I will randomly pick a comment from those videos. If you win, you will have to give me your address in order to mail the poster to you, and Gary Busey has still not answered my messages from last week's giveaway, so if he doesn't respond by next Sunday, I will give away 2 posters this time.